outlets that go live after the game. I already saw three.
Wow. The game has changed. We were the only ones for a little bit
We
there. I wish we'd
changed the
start going
game.
live. Wish we'd start going live earlier, but we didn't know to do
Yeah.
that.
All right. I believe we should be live now.
Yeah, I got the notification. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Jungle Auburn Basketball Podcast. It'll probably be our least listened to episode of the year so far. No one wants to recap the losses. But we always do our duty. We
Always.
commiserate.
This is what this podcast was founded on many years ago. Conversations after losses. Can't wait. I can't wait to hear this conversation about. We're not going to be number one, even though there's no reason we shouldn't be number one.
Oh, there's this is gonna be a discussion, I think, in our pod for sure about
Yeah.
if it hadn't been at home, if we hadn't punked so hard, it may be because at the end we got it back to 9, and like these people that don't actually pay attention, maybe they'll. But if it
They
wasn't
still would
Duke,
have done it.
if it was like a Baylor or I don't know, one of these non-blue bloods. If Iowa State was doing this, then we might be fine. But it's Duke. It's Duke
They,
with
they
it's Duke
always
with
do
the
it with
National Player of the
losses.
Year.
I'm trying to think of a time that it's ever not happened where you lose and you don't move off of one. It's so rare. Um,
Everybody was saying we'd
so
finally
it
do
is.
it, but I think they thought that we would be able to keep it if we lost away at
Yeah,
Alabama or lost away at a
yeah,
top 10, 15 place. They probably didn't think it would be at home. like I
yeah.
mean
No
it's a
doubt.
great team, but still at home still hurts.
Yeah, especially being up what 10 or 12 uh, to start the game. I mean, you want to start this or do you want to wait for some people to
Yeah,
join?
let's just do it. Let's do it. We're already talking, so
Yeah. All right. Three, two.
all right, we are back with the Jungle Podcast. We have just lost to the number 6 Florida Gators by 9 points. I think we all knew it was coming at some point. We weren't going to win every game for the rest of the year. We were in historic territory with statistics on this team. People were comparing us not only to some of the best ever SEC teams, they were comparing us to some of the best ever teams in college basketball history. Like, think of some of those amazing teams, like that Kentucky team with Anthony Davis on it, those Florida teams that won back-to-back national championships, UConn last year, several other teams I'm forgetting right now. We were getting compared to those. The stats were saying we were better than those, that we'd be favored in those matchups. So there was a lot of hype about this team, but I think Auburn fans knew that that might be a little of an overplay. I don't think they thought we would get punked in our own house tonight. And it's only a 9 point loss, but there were some pretty bad moments where we were down 20 points in Neville Arena. I think this is one of those times where the score does not indicate how bad the game was. We started out strong, up 10 at one point to start the game, and then just lost it completely. And at one point, completely lost our composure. Thank God in the second half with about 8 minutes, 7 minutes left, we fought back because there was a moment there where we weren't sure if we were even going to fight back. And this pod was going to get brutal. It's going to still be brutal, and the sky is going to be falling for me, and there will be a lot of composure and smart, balanced takes from Matt, but that's what you've grown to expect. So, here it is, and Matt, War Eagle, and, what'd you see out there?
Yeah, War Eagle. I think what you're talking to is the what I guess it was a 31 point swing from when we were up 10 to being down 21. And that was, I don't know the exact, but it was basically half the game, the middle half of the game, the middle 20 to maybe 25 minutes where, I mean, Florida was hitting shots. They were the more physical team. They punked us on the glass sometimes. I thought they defended really well. And I thought our it's one of the weirder games I've seen where, man, to start the game, Neville was electric, and it came through on TV. You got the A list Jay Billis crew calling the game. our defensive plan to really overwhelm them on the perimeter was working. We were up what 13-5, 14-5. And man, when it turned and Walter Clayton started it, and he had been out, he played tonight, played really well. But by the end of the game, it wasn't a Walter Clayton all world performance. He got him back in the game and turned the tide. But those big guys, man, we'll talk more about our guys, but all the credit in the world to Florida's interior players. It's been a long time since Broome and Cardwell didn't feel like monsters out there, and they did not. And Florida's big guys, they don't look huge, but every time you watch them, they controlled the interior. And I think today's game really maybe makes us realize like that is who this team is. When Auburn is really good, it's how powerful we are inside. And Florida is a tough matchup because they neutralize that really well.
People have been asking me, how good is this team? A lot of neutral fans from other teams, even some Auburn people that just don't pay attention quite as hard. Like, so you do this podcast, like, number one, how good are we? And I'm like, well, we're number one, in my opinion. We're like the Swiss cheese method you hear about in like safety training of like, if one thing went wrong, we still have several other aspects of our game that can keep us in games. We've won a lot of games where something has gone wrong. One player we count on had a bad game, but everybody else stood up. The other team just got so hot from three, but we just kept going at them and scoring, and we finally beat them we just had that Swiss cheese of like, one thing can go wrong and we're fine. Even two things could maybe go wrong and we could still win a game. At home in Neville Arena, maybe three things could go wrong and we could still win a game. Janai Broome can go down for 2 games and we can still win games even on the road. So I guess the question I would have for you is, did you think we had it in us to lose in this many facets of the game?
Yeah, it's shocking to the system because of Neville, right? How they keep
Mm-hmm.
listing all these stats. At one point, we're down like 16, and they're like, "This is the biggest deficit Auburn's faced in 4 years at home." It was that kind of game. But if you watch enough college basketball and you watch this stuff happen, you know in the back of your mind that a team can get hot and a team can. I thought it started out on Florida hit a lot of tough shots early, like early. Then they got a lot of open shots, and
I
they
thought
hit
it was
their
the other
open
way around.
shots.
I thought it was the other way
Uh,
around. I felt like we left them open at times. I thought maybe it was part of the strategy to let them shoot. There was at least one guy on their team they named where we just left him wide open. It's like, you know what? He hit that three, and then the announcer right after said that's only his third all year. I'm like, all right, that's why he was
yeah,
wide open. They dare. It's like leaving Cardwell or Chris Moore out there open for our side, so fine. But then after that, in my opinion, we started having some threes get hit in our face once we finally said let's step it up,
yes,
and that really hurt.
yeah. So you know that can happen, right? I mean, you always know but you feel like at home with and it we didn't play great. We'll get into why we didn't play great. To me, it really felt like an avalanche of a lot of and Florida, to their credit, I think for me, and I know this is predictable of me, but I just thought Florida imposed their will in this game. I thought they were a more physical team. I thought they kind of punked us a little bit in terms of the effort and intensity at times. And this Auburn team has overcome that a lot. Florida was not having it. And we had to earn. Did we miss a lot of shots at the rim? Yes. Did we miss free throws? Yes. Did we? We did not play. Janai Broome didn't play the great. Like a lot of things didn't go right, but man, my eyes said Florida played a really good game in Neville, down double digits early. To do that, I think you just got to give them credit. And obviously, Todd Golden, their coach, knows more about our team than just about anybody, being on our staff, being really close with Stephen and Bruce. Like that showed. I thought their plan was really good and their guys were locked into their defensive plan really well. And it was but I would also say, I don't know if you felt this during the game, that it felt like one of those games where like the ball just didn't quite bounce to us. Like they didn't miss free throws, like they didn't really leave it. And then those 50-50 moments where we had opportunities, it felt like it was we made plenty of mistakes, but it also felt like some of those. There's some I remember,
Well,
yeah, like I wish we get the rebound, but it goes right to them. Like how do it's tough.
it felt like I said, the Swiss cheese thing. Like, okay, they hit a lot of threes. They got really hot from three. Fine, they hit 13 threes at the end of the game. They got 39% from three, but at one point it was in the 50%. I think at halftime we were down 10. but a lot of it comes down to it didn't like it's one of the few times where it feels like we got out coached, we got out planned. And I think we might be looking at like a new trend of we've had different coaches that we felt like had our number. Todd Golden, a former Bruce Pearl acolyte, young guy, we might have to admit that he's starting to get Bruce's number. That this is just one of those games where he seems to know something there, and it makes sense because he used to be on Bruce's staff. But it just seems like the last couple times we played Florida, they're the ones that expose
Well,
us. They're the ones that seem to be prepared for what we bring. So it's tough. I think he's a really good coach. They're a top 5, 6 team, so of course they're really good. But I just thought we were mentally weak tonight too. So like, sure, we didn't get to the balls right, but we missed our free throws. We turned the
yeah.
ball over. We pouted. We had to bench Broom and CBM for a while. That was like the turning point of the game where the rope was just gone and it was over. And we fought. We fought at the end, thank God. But there was a while there we sat Broom for a solid like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Same with CBM. The moment in particular, I think we'll all point to was we went down. So we were up 10. We end the half down 10, but it doesn't look good, in my opinion. And sure, Storman, Norman Ryan is saying, like, it's fine. We've been down 10, but it looked really bad. It did not look like we were playing our game. It looked rough on offense.
Mhm.
It looked rough on defense. We were lucky to be down 10, really. And so they come out and we say, all right, well, it'll say a lot if we can hit that reset button at a halftime. We did not. They still stayed off from three. We were not getting anything on offense. We missed a ton of baskets at the rim. Our defense was getting exposed. And then we went down about 17 points, I think. Broom missed another shot, and he just like fouled out of frustration at the half court line, basically, on Walter Clayton, just kind of grabbed him. And he looked so defeated, and he was hanging his head. He had already been called out by Matt, I think, at one point, or somebody in our text about being pouty. And he does that, and they bench him for 5 or 6 minutes. I think it was probably the right coaching move. I mean, at that point, we were talking, let's just show some fight. If we don't show fight here, like this is a real trend issue we're going to have to talk about. Luckily, we showed some fight, but I think that's the moment I point out personally where it was like, oh boy, this was not a good look.
Yeah. So first, I want to say you're right. Florida's always been a hard match historically, not a good matchup for Auburn basketball. We did beat them. I was at the SEC championship last year in the tournament. We beat them pretty handily. But even then, you're right about the Todd Golden thing. I wouldn't say it's time to call it a Buzz Williams record against A&M is much worse than Florida, but in the last 5 or 6 years, whatever. But it's something to track because for Todd to build it the way he has this quickly with those kind of athletes, like I don't know, we have great athletes, right? Like this is still the same basketball team we've watched all year. Those dudes looked super athletic today for Florida, so give them a lot of credit. You're right about the second half response just wasn't quite there. I think Florida had a lot to do with that. But I would also point out we got hit with a big punch in the first half and got back to down 4 with a minute left. And people talk about like the end of the half, beginning of the second half. That's a really sneaky time, and Auburn really does a good job of going for 2-for-1s late in half to try to get multiple shots at the rim late. I forget what happened, but it went from 4 to 10 really fast. Like Cardwell fouled up 8 with 2 seconds left at the other side. Like that's 2 points. I know it's only 2, but being down 8 to 10, like, and it was 4. We were down 4, and we left a guy. We completely busted an assignment, left a guy wide open, and it's 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever it was. We that last minute of the first half was bad because that's how you end up down 10 instead of 4, which is a totally different game. Um, Overall, I want to get into that, what you said. We know we've all expressed our opinions on this team before the season, and these characters that we follow so much, that we love so much, they're great basketball players. This team is still really good. People need to make sure they don't panic with one game. But I will say my weakness, I've always thought, is what happens when they get punched in the face and things don't go their way. Because we've been a really good front running team. We've come back, we've proven toughness. Houston, Iowa State, Duke, even the way that game went, you name it. They have shown that they are tough. I'm not questioning their toughness necessarily. But this was obviously uncharted territory at home to be down that much. And you start to see some things that aren't great from a body language standpoint. Broom has always been prone to that. I also have to say it's one of the dumbest things in college basketball now that we call those intentional fouls. I know they're trying to like let the game be free flowing, but like growing up, that's exactly what you do to stop a fast break. It's very annoying to me that that's a technical now. Like I don't like that at all. I think it's dumb. You're already going to get a foul. It's going to add up and get the team in the bonus. That's my take. I hate that. I think it's dumb. But you could list a bunch of guys and be like, I thought Dylan looks a little slow and off today. Which maybe that's you would never question that with him. His effort was good. It just didn't. Maybe that's all Florida. Like he just didn't quite look the same to me from from all around. And then Chad is. We can get into Chad eventually. I'm sure you want to. The whole group chat all of a sudden was on my side with Chad. But I other than Miles Kelly, who I thought he played the most minutes, and Tahad. I think Tahad battled hard and had good, pretty good body language. Change was pretty good, but everybody else, there were some weak moments for sure.
Matt's breaking up a little bit on the Zoom chat. Let us know if
Right.
that's impacting you. It's fine on this side, but let us know in the chat if that's impacting you guys. No, yeah, the Tahad, he fought a little bit. I was really disappointed by the mental lapses. I was really disappointed by the pouting. This team, there was a ton of talk in the last week or two about how old this team is. I mean, a lot of national narrative stuff about like, wow, this team is doing some historic stuff. Well, of course they are. They're so old. Look how old this team is. Look, this one and done from 4 years ago is younger than some of these 5 year players. Yeah, that's how math works, first of all. But yeah, we do have an older team with these fifth year guys. So it was pretty disappointing to watch them go down like that and then pout their heads, put their heads down, call silly fouls, turn the ball over, start playing a little hero ball. When you most, it's so frustrating. And you think a team like this with this many seniors would understand when times get tough. That's when you need to lock it down the most. That's when you need to make that extra pass the most. That's when you need to get the good shot the most. And we had a couple tonight where when it got really tough, our players decided to dribble it out and try it a long two, contested long two, which is really frustrating to watch from some older guys. There could have been a comeback. We could have come back. We pouted. We had to bench our potential national player of the year candidate for 5 minutes because he couldn't get his head straight. So it's very disappointing. I think this team, like you said, is not. We have faced some adversity. We've been down before earlier in the year. We haven't been quite punked like this in Neville in a very long time. So I think that's part of it with the camp out and everything. So there was a lot of hype just to get knocked in the stomach and lose the air or whatever, not expecting that. But if they just had stayed focused like you would expect a bunch of older guys would, this game could have come back even at that 20 mark. I mean, we got it back to 9. Like they would have been very difficult. Yes, but
I was
like
gonna
at home
say,
in Neville, with this kind of team that shoots the way it does, that plays the way it does, you don't get down. You don't start making silly shots. You don't start, laying on the ground for a while because you didn't get the foul call you wanted or because you got knocked around a bit. Like you never know what happened. So the most I can take from this is one, thank God at least they fought back eventually. Sucks that it took Bruce having to teach them a lesson by sitting them to make that happen, it felt like. Two, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with the second one. I'm just upset. Oh, here's the second one. Is
oh,
that
so, go ahead.
hopefully in the long term, this pays off. Hopefully in the long term, we win out, we do whatever, we have a big long March run, and we look back on this and we go, yeah, that every team has to adjust, and because we got beat the way we did adjust, and that's what happened. But it could go another direction too. I don't know. Like this is the kind of stuff we talk about when we lose.
That margin for error is just so small, and we've been so spoiled this year of like, yeah, you could lose any of these games, especially in a league as tough as the SEC is. Bruce says things to try to frame it his way, but I mean, he said after game 1 or 2 in the SEC plays, like, we can beat anybody in the league. He said we could lose to anybody if we don't play well, and that may not be true, but this year more than other years it is true. If you go look at our second half of the schedule, like we better buckle up as fans and players. Like it's just getting started. Our schedule gets tougher, and a lot of people. Ryan mentioned on our preseason episode that this was a dangerous game. We knew Florida was going to be good. Um, it is surprising how it went, especially being up double digits early. And the crowd was terrific, by the way. Like Neville was, to me, it was one of the best atmospheres of the year. And when we were down 15 with 10 to go, they were looking for an excuse to get the team going. To your point, they got it from 21 to 9 from 14 to 8 minutes left. So they were actually in pretty good shape. But then there's a my point of the game, it was that Ryan talked about it in our group chat, but I couldn't help but laugh because they got an offense. They missed a shot. It's a 9 point game with 8 minutes to go. You're going to be coming back down to cut into the lead. They get a ball goes to them and an offensive rebound, I believe, if I remember correctly. Kind of unfortunate. We reset. They miss another shot. And then one of their big guys goes flying through the air, Dylan Cardwell style, and just goes and taps the ball to their shooter who hits a three. And he just annihilates Chad. Like he knocks Chad Baker over. It was a physical play, but there's a moment where they're shooting a three and Chad's laying on the ground. And it kind of epitomized the game to me. And then it's 12 points, and we never really recovered after that to make it more competitive.
And CBM once again goes to the locker room with like 2 or 3 minutes left and never comes back out on like a play. At some point, he might actually get like really hurt, and then I complain that like he was over dramatic, but he's just always on the ground, like soccer style with these injuries and like going to the locker room so many times. I don't know. That was the moment where everyone in the chat was like, all right, CBM, I'm going to be mean to you on the podcast. At least I just felt like he's mentally weak and he was being physically weak. And it was just a really bad game for him. But it was a bad game for a lot of people. But maybe it's a good time
So
to start switching over to some statistics so we don't keep like, at least myself, keep just doing this the sky is falling thing. But if maybe we look through some stats, it might help us out a bit. And like I think, usually we pick an MVP for who, helps us win the game. And usually when we lose, which luckily, hey, during this pod, we have not had to do this a ton of times. We usually pick a stat that kind of is indicative of how we lost this game. So I'm going to run through some stuff here. Field goal percentage, the Gators 48 to our 43%, 3-point percentage 39% to our 32%. A big one here, free throw percentage, which you don't always point out, but it was 83% to 61%. It was even lower at one point for us, like in the 50s or 40s. We missed a lot of free throws this game. They still only hit one more free throw than us, but we shot a couple more than them. Turnovers, them 12, us 8. Points off turnovers, them 17, us 13. So they turned us over. We turned them over a lot more, but they scored off their turnovers. Rebound battle was even. Let's see, second chance points. We had more 22-15, bench points, even points in the paint. We had 38 to their 30, which I find a little surprising. Here's another big one. Fast break points, 14 for them, 3 for us. We have not been a great fast break team all year. It's been a while since we've been a great fast break team. Blocks, we love blocks, 5 for them, 4 for us. It started out strong with blocks. We got 2 in the first 2 possessions, so it's surprising we ended up with 4 of them. Assist, here's a big one. They had 22. We had 16. I don't know if you have a stat you feel like stuck out there, but which one would you pick if you had to pick one stat?
yeah, the one that screamed at me was the fast break points. Not because we're a great fast break team, but I think it epitomized that there were just some moments where we didn't get back. And Florida's big thing, and they talked about it in the broadcast, is they want to rebound and run. They're going to rebound with everybody going to the glass, and then they're going to run as quickly as possible down the court. And I do think maybe we haven't talked about it this year, but when Janai Broom's your best player, even a healthy Janai Broom, you're just not going to be run and gun. You're just not. He's not that style of player. So I think not necessarily that we only had 3, but the fact that they got 14 against our defense. Because if you look statistically with us at home, we're a great offense, but our defense at home has been really good. If you're watching on YouTube, we've got the Justin Ferguson box score, and giving up 90 at home, giving up 48 in the first half at home to Florida is, I'm sure, the side of the ball that they're going to be talking about. And quite a few of those points were just transition play, not getting back, not getting enough numbers back. So to me, when you lose by 9 and you give up 11 more that are free points, they don't have to go against physically. That's
I think the big narrative for this game will be how hot Florida was from 3. They hit every open one. They hit some contested ones. They hit them at the end. They hit them at the beginning. All across the board, they hit them all the times. But that was the only met. That might be the biggest stat. And I know you just picked second chance point. That might be the biggest stat. But the one that killed me the most, and is the one I've been watching somewhat frequently later, is we were 32% from the field. Janai was 8 of 19 shooting. There was just so many missed layups out there. Our guards struggle, but they've been struggling at that, so fine. But watching Broom be that inefficient under the basket is what I felt like really killed us, because we can have them go off from 3. but we have to be able to challenge her. So to watch them hit a three and then us go down, miss a layup, watch them hit another three, us go again and miss the layup, it's hurts. And with Broom, the way he was playing earlier in the year, clear it out, let him do his business. He's going to get to that left hand shoulder and it's going to go in every single time. Great offense. Now that he's missing a lot of those and he's not getting that same over the right, like left-handed over the right shoulder automatic two, he's starting to get some of these like a little too far away. He's not getting the back down he wants, and then he shoots a little too far away, a long, medium, long two that's not great, or he's having to do some really crafty moves to get where he needs to go, and they're just not quite going in. And after you spent the whole 30-second shot clock doing that, it can be kind of brutal to the offense. So I don't know. That's kind of what stuck out to me was just how inefficient Broom was, and he wasn't the only one.
Yeah. all of that all of that to me sounds like great defense because they made it hard for him. They fought him for position early. He did get inside, used his size, and didn't finish a few times. That is fair. But I thought Florida made his life really difficult. And he is the best player on our team. He's still, by the way, 18, 11, and 6 assists in 30 minutes with one turnover. I mean, he got his numbers, but you're right. It wasn't super efficient. The other thing I was going to say, there was the stretch in the first half where they were hitting everything, and it was a combination of Clayton, and then we were clearly deciding to leave some guys, and it quickly got out of control where they were getting open threes. To your point, um, what about the other side? When you think about this game, first of all, Florida, we hadn't given up. We hadn't let anybody hit 10 threes all year. So the defensive, our focus was clearly different. Our game, I wish I understood better. We clearly were deciding to give that up some to certain players, and then we adjusted to Clayton, and that opened up other things. But how about our team? I thought Florida did a great job of limiting our 3-point offense because other than Miles Kelly, who I thought was admirable tonight, I thought he played really well and really hard.
That's the only
Um,
player. The only player I would give any compliment to in this game was
yeah,
Miles Kelly. So I'm glad you called that out.
but like the 3-point defense of Florida, knowing how much that can really get us going at Neville. I mean, we hit a couple late. We might have had 4 threes when this game was in question made. And we didn't even get to take many, which is what I'm pointing out. Like, I think they funneled us inside to those tough twos, and they were willing to live with that. That'll be something to track moving forward. Assists is the other big thing. Auburn has been the best assist team in the country. And because we were leaving guys open, whether intentionally or by mistake, 22 assists on 31 baskets for Florida. That is an Auburn number that Auburn's been doing all year, getting tons of assists on their made shots, moving the ball well. Florida's the team that did that better tonight.
Miles Kelly is the only one I want to shout out. I said that already, but I just want to give him another shout out. He was unafraid the entire time, hit some big shots. He's getting really confident driving the ball, which I really like. He still missed some under the basket, fine, but he makes plays when other people were kind of standing around or having a hard time. His dribble drive's been getting a lot better, and he's been finishing a decent amount, so I'm happy with that. And he's a huge threat from three. He is scary from three. Love seeing him get an open shot. People are trying their best not to give it to him, but when it's open, it's in. Everyone else
Yeah.
not so hot. Everyone else not so
Th-
hot.
th- 35 minutes, 0 turnovers with how often Miles was involved. He was up to the physical challenge of this game, and he really gave us some offense that kept us in it. And I thought he played his tail off on defense too. I just think he's gotten so much better on that end. And our coaches made a very intentional decision to play Chris Moore in the first half and cut CBM's minutes a little short. And then in the second half, when you're down 10 and 20, you got to play CBM, right? You have to have his offense. And I'm not so sure if Auburn hadn't been close or up in the second half because CBM played 19 minutes. Like he didn't play very much. Part of that was because he got hurt late, but that was 2 minutes
There
left,
was
right?
a
3 minutes left. So just
there,
there was something about our coaching staff's plan where they knew Florida was going to be really physical and we needed rebounds and we needed these tough plays. And I think they wanted to play Chris more, but you can't when you're down double digits.
there was a long, odd rotation of Turtle and Chris Moore in at the same time near the end of the first half, where we had gone
Yep.
down a decent amount. And then we had
Yep.
them in for like 5 or 6 minutes, like 2 or 3 rotations, it felt like. And we did have a short comeback to get it a little close because Miles Kelly had hit two threes. And I think maybe Cheney or somebody else had hit a two. And it was like, okay, I was almost ready to be like, wow, all right, kind of a run with Turtle and Chris Mormon, but it wasn't a real run. It wasn't like a well done offense. The defense was fine. It's just that Miles Kelly happened to hit his two threes kind of during that space. And then it got brutalized for the next like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. It was just kind of frustrating that they were still in. They're just black holes on offense to a certain extent. And you can have one or the other end to play defense. And I shout out to them for the hustle they've had. But when you have both of them in the same time, oh boy, they can double team everybody because they can just leave those guys mostly open, So it was
They
tough.
saw very quickly. Auburn's coaches saw that the Turtle minutes were not going to be a good idea
That
in
was
this
it for
game. I think,
Turtle. That was it for
yeah, he
Turtle.
did. And Chris too, because I think Chris was more. We just got to ride Miles and CBM in Denver because we need offense, and that costs you some things in a game. I thought Chris's minutes on defense were pretty good in the first half. He was locked in and got a steal and got a rebound. He was doing the things that you need. But at the end of the day, and by the way, I think Cheney played well. He only
I'm about
played
to say
21 minutes.
Chris Thomas in the chat said Cheney played well, and I was going to bring that up too. That Cheney's on my list of I wasn't like happy with him the way I was with Miles Kelly, but I wasn't mad at him. There was this time where he was kind of dominating the ball at points as our scoring option because we had taken Broom and CBM out, and he was kind of our only guy down there to really do anything. So he had, I think, a back down or two where he got in there and scored for us when we really needed it during trying to come back. But then he also hit a stupid foul where he had got them an and one, and then on the next possession took a long two because he kind of had gotten in a mindset that he was the guy that's going to need to score here for us to do it, which was a little frustrating. We had Pettiford out there and a couple other guys that could have helped out. So Cheney was fine. I don't expect Cheney to be some world beater. So it's like when he's fine, especially in the game where everybody else struggled, I'm cool with him. I just wouldn't say that like it was like some great game from Cheney or anything.
Cheney was keeping us in it too. The part of the game that you were talking about earlier when we fought back, Cheney was the one we were going to on offense because Broom was out and a couple of and he, by the way, he's the only guy on our team who made more shots than he missed. So I give him credit for hitting some tough shots, and he only had one rebound, which I'm wondering if perhaps that was part of the reason they didn't have him out there because that's surprising that he played 21 minutes and only had one rebound out of that power forward spot.
Here's a narrative that I kind of started forming in my head that when times got tough, we play these top 10 teams and it's really tough out there. There's two guys I feel confident we can go to. It's Janai Broom, who should have been our National Player of the Year candidate here. He will get his, and he will still need to be double teamed at times, and he's going to be confident. Well, he had a pretty, like, we'll talk more in detail about Janai Broom. The other guy is Todd Pettiford. When Denver Jones kind of faltered in all these top 10 matchups, Todd Pettiford looked like a killer out there, looked confident, goes and gets something. If the team's kind of, there's some blood in the water, Todd Pettiford goes out there and hits something to keep us back in it. And tonight, both those guys disappointed in the top 10 matchup. And the only guy that didn't really, in my opinion, was Miles Kelly. So I think that's kind of another blow to how something like this can happen in Neville Arena. And another factor, this is just a multiplier effect here. I kind of give Neville Arena 8 to 10 points as like what would happen if this game was somewhere else. So when we win by 5, 6, 7 points, I always say like, oh, you know what? I don't know if we would have won this one away or neutral because we was in Neville and I gave that. So when we lose by 9 points, when we were down by 20 at one point, and I add in that multiplier of where Neville Arena gets you, you're like, oh, it's worse than it looks for sure. But that was my narrative that Pettiford and Broom were like guys they're going to get theirs in these big games, and they just did not this game.
Well, ironically, and I want to dig into this more with you because Janai got his numbers. I think you did a really good job of talking about why it wasn't his normal game. Pettiford similar, 40% from three, 14 points, 3 assists, one turnover.
It's the
I thought Pettiford was
inefficiency.
close,
It's
but so his inefficiency was what 2 of 6 from two. Maybe he didn't finish at the rim against those big dudes a couple times. I thought Todd was pretty good, and I thought the competitiveness was good, and his defense was his.
but also
He
think about all the other top 10 matchups we had him. He scored like 20 points in all these other top 10 matchups. He was a killer that was getting the crowd to pop. There was a couple times, there was one particular I really didn't like near the end, or not even near the end, during some of these comeback attempts where he just kind of dribbled it around. the entire time and then took a long two. And you know how much I hate these long twos. I keep bringing it up, but they're
Yeah.
usually like moments where we need a shot badly for one of our guys to be like, screw it, I'm gonna shoot something out of here, and it just always kills momentum so badly. It might as well be a turnover. But for 14 points, 4 of 11 from the field, compared to what we've kind of expected from him in these top 10 matchups, where he is a leader, he kind of like gives us that little bit of that fire. He was fine tonight. He was fine.
You're
He's not on my bad list. He was fine. And compared to what we've expected from these top 10 matchups, he was not there.
you're focused on the wrong guy. You're focused that you one of your scorching hot takes was really validated tonight.
I know because
Who's the guy who really let us
I
down?
come to expect it. I've come to expect that Denver Jones goes ghost mode in these big games. And I like Denver a lot. And I think we found out recently that Denver and CBM might have an extra year. And I look forward to having him for another year because he's a good player. It's just been irritating to watch him go completely ghost mode. I mean, we're getting into roast mode here. Denver, and it's it. That's just it. This is the trend. My trend is completely validated. Denver Jones cannot play against these elite teams. I hope he proves me wrong at some point, but just go ahead and expect it. And that's why I was begging for lots of Dahad minutes near the end of games because that's who's going to need to be there for these big matchups. CBM, brutal mentally, physically, had to be benched at one point because of how he was hanging his head. Broom, even worse because you're supposed to be our national player of the year. I'm not trying to get too crazy, but he's probably lost national player of the year after this. After the injury kind of evened him up with the Duke guy, Cooper Flack. After this one, being this inefficient, going down at home against Florida, they already wanted to find an excuse to not give him national player of the year. Well, they found their excuse. This was not a great game from him. Who else played bad? Those three in particular really disappointed me. So Dylan Cardwell was, like you said, was off. He still had 12 rebounds and 5 points, but there was something there too with Cardwell I didn't feel good about. He had 4 fouls, so he was fouling a good bit. I don't know.
Do you get what
CBM
I'm
and Broom
saying
are
though
really the
about
ones that, and Denver too.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think Denver primarily. Denver, even if he's a ghost, he had his three turnovers were loud, painful turnover. They were momentum killing, very out of the realm of normal for him. That's not really who he is. But today, it was really three really painful.
Well,
I'm trying.
it's not just
I don't
his
want to bore
turnovers either.
everybody.
You get 3 turnovers on the sheet, but the amount of times the ball gets poked away, or we can't get the offense going, or there was one kind of like early in the game where I was like, oh no, it's happening again. I think he either gotten the ball poked away or he just
I
was
know
having a
exactly what
hard
you're
time
talking
getting
about.
he was having a hard time getting pressured. So then he kind of just like puts his head down, drives. He ends up getting the foul. But I was like, oh, this is what happens every time. You can't look up and pass the ball or get the offense started. So you just feel like you have to drive. And luckily, you got a foul call here. And then I think he still missed a free throw on that. And I was like, yep, it's happening again.
Isn't it a great to feel validated for like because I remember that exact I was watching a little behind everybody but until I caught up in the second half and I was watching not paying attention to the group text and I'm like oh Jackson I guarantee you he was all over that possession for Denver and I feel the same way when I see Chad Baker Mazara laying behind the play multiple times every game
We both
and we
have
have
our
five on
validated
four in a
opinions
competitive
here. Enough to where I responded about how
but
CBM's on the floor again. I'm gonna call this out. And you're like, thank God. And then you were like, oh, Denver did his thing. Jack is gonna love that. I'm gonna call it. Yeah, so we're both on the same
Den-
page on
Den-
these.
Denver grabbed 7 rebounds. I'll give him credit. And but here's the thing. You mentioned I wish I would see more Tahad. Tonight the problem was we played Tahad 25 minutes, but with Chat not playing, we're playing Denver and Miles at the 2 and 3. So like Denver was out there in part because Chad was not his normal self tonight. So tough. And this is one of those games, Jackson. You know how we love to talk about our 10 guys and our rotation and how deep we are? Well, Jakai's not playing, clearly. He's not in the rotation. Turtle is basically not in the rotation. Um, we are playing 8 guys. We're
And that
playing
was
eight guys, and
which
one of
is
them is
odd.
one of them is Chris Moore.
Mm.
So we have 7 that we feel good about in different ways, and seven's really good. I'm not saying we don't have a really good team. I think everybody needs to. We've forgotten how to lose. It's okay. Like college basketball happens. Everybody needs to
Well,
breathe. We're in first place in the SEC. It's going to be okay. We're really good. We're still a very good team. One game doesn't take away 22 or whatever that we've already played. Having said that, you know that everybody left on our schedule is going to be watching today's game. Now they may not have the dudes to do what Florida did, but I can guarantee you now there's going to be some film out there that people are going to be very interested in. And we haven't even talked about this. The reason this game hurts more than just losing to Florida, the way it happened, like you said, was kind of painful. But guess what we got coming up this week? You're going on the road twice. You're going to Vandy, which is a house of horrors for us, and you're going to Tuscaloosa with College Game Day next Saturday. So this one would have been really big to just get every win you can get before you know how hard the road can be. And now, we need to try to get at least one of these road games to stay where we think we should be in the SEC and national conversation.
We talked about in the SEC preview if we would lose a home game this year, and we kind of only Matt decided that we would. It sucks that it happened, but that's where we were, that we could even talk about that kind of thing. But it hurts because you still expect to lose some of these away. And hey, thank God without Brewman, we won that at Georgia game. We've won some of these away games that in the
South
past I
Carolina,
would have, that I expected that we would have lost. So thank God we've done that so far, but it's only going to get harder. The Vanderbilt game is going to be tough in Nashville. They've already beaten a team or two. They've stormed the court already twice this year, so they've already beaten some top 10 teams there. Yeah, he's like away at
Tennessee, and
Alabama.
Kentucky.
Yeah, away at Alabama, you just expect to lose. I'm sorry. That's just go ahead and expect to lose that one. It's really tough to win on the road, much less against a number 3 team. It's hard to win at home against the number 6 team. Think about how hard it is to win away at the number 3 team that's your bitter rival that wants to beat you desperately. So of course that one's gonna be hard. And then if they do that, they're gonna have tied us up. Alabama's got two losses right now in the SEC. Just one, right?
One.
So they
We're
could take the
tied. They
lead.
play Arkansas tonight.
They could take the lead on
Yes.
us in Tuscaloosa, which is
Yes.
just a huge reversal of our fortunes and what we're thinking about in the SEC. But that's just how it is right now. The SEC's that good. You got to win. We still got away at
Yeah.
Kentucky, away at Texas A&M against Buzz Williams. It's gonna be tough. We just losing at home like this to Florida, even though it's a top 10 team, number 6 team, changes everything, to our math. So I think we're still great, but it's gonna get tough out there. Something I want to
You
dive
got to
into a bit.
steal. You got to steal one. You got to steal some of these on the road, is what this probably means because Alabama's been so good. Everybody else behind Alabama has 3, 4, 5 losses, but Alabama has, to their credit, and they play. They have to play tonight, so they have to beat Arkansas tonight. Well, if they do that, we'll be tied with them. So we'll see. But you're right. It's going to come down. It seems like it. I mean, a long way to go. We could fall apart. Maybe they could fall apart. I don't know. But these two Alabama matchups are going to be grown man basketball. And but I think it's a slightly better matchup. They don't have the guys that Florida has in the same way. They're a better team, but I think it's a slightly better matchup for us.
Yeah. Playing in that big airport hangar though is going to be tough. We're going to get in foul trouble. The shots just aren't going to go down the way
But
we want. So
but Jackson, think about the one positive for today is Auburn's been number one, getting all this historic, like we've never seen this. This has been like the best month of our basketball lives, right? We're getting everybody's attention. Well, now Bruce gets this today, and a lot of good film, by the way, to go through with his guys on things to fix and things to improve. And then everybody, like you said, I guarantee you we're not going to be number one. I guarantee you everybody's going to start saying we're overrated, which is exactly where a Bruce Pearl team actually wants to be. So I'm not going to be shocked. I think we're going to bounce back pretty well from this. You said it right about Tuscaloosa, but this team is absolutely good enough to go win in Tuscaloosa. And if they do, you talk about a shot across the bow back to prove who we are. Next Saturday is going to be that opportunity to do that.
yeah, I can already sense the frustration if we lose our number 1 ranking, go number 2 or number 3 or whatever, and then we go win in Tuscaloosa, but Duke just never loses because the ACC sucks this year and we never jump them
Well,
again.
the
But
number
that's a
one thing
whole
is over. The number one thing is over. We all need to punt on it. We're going to lose more games. Like we had our run. I'm glad we did for all the reasons we've talked about on the podcast. Everybody needs to just let that go because that's exactly what's going to happen. And even if Duke loses a game somewhere, it's going to be the same thing. Like they're going to just stack wins, and we are not. Everybody just needs to. That does not matter. We had our run. It's fine. It's fun. Let's go back to playing good, really good basketball and have a chip on our shoulder and quit being the number one hunted team. We're still going to be the hunted team in the SEC, by the way, especially if we go beat Alabama next week. But Everybody just needs to let that go. It's over. We had a good run, and we might win the national championship. But number one is gone, in my opinion, unless something weird happens the next few weeks.
If you listen to this podcast often, you know I'm always poking at things that are almost trends. And usually Matt disagrees with me, and sometimes they turn out like this Denver thing where it's like I'm one
Yeah.
game too early to start calling that out. I was another one recently I was getting on, definitely last year with Aiden Holloway. There's always just stuff that I'm pointing at a little bit to be like, it's of concern. It's not happened yet, but it's of concern. And the one thing I want to bring up, and I think Matt's probably going to disagree with me, post injury, Janai Broom, I think has been,
Mm.
it feels very inefficient. It feels like those shots that were automatic are not automatic anymore. There's just a lot more of these balls that, he takes the whole shot clock up and then gets a decent shot and it just doesn't go in, or he ends up getting down there and in the past he's been able to back people down and get where he needs to be and be crafty and rarely takes a bad shot, and even if it didn't go in, it was in a good position. And now he's had a higher percentage of them where he gets locked in and is going to do something with the ball no matter what, and then ends up with like a fadeaway long two that of course wasn't going to go in and rarely ever goes in. And it's just of concern. It's not quite a trend. I'm not calling it out yet or saying we need to adjust anything. I'm totally down to keep going back to our National Player of the Year candidate, but it's something to watch if he keeps missing these twos and completely submarining the offense by not passing the ball around and getting kind of locked in there. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think he's 100%. I don't think it's the same. If you've ever had a really bad ankle injury, he was out less than 2 weeks, Jackson. And you watched it. His career was over. His season was, I mean, you watched it all flash in front of you, and how quickly we forget that that was a significant roll of an ankle that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I really don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff in sports now with guys coming back from injuries really fast compared to how they used to. If you want to dive into that deep dive, there's some stuff going on. I don't know exactly what all goes into the medical side, but um, he doesn't have the same lift or explosiveness. And when you're winning, that doesn't even you just keep playing. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't think it necessarily helps him to sit. I'm not saying that, but we do need to start as a coaching staff. If there's a way to get him, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, but he is not the same guy. I think your eyes are telling you the truth there.
Yeah.
He's still playing really well. He's still leading this team. Not as good tonight, but we hold him to again. He had 18,
I still
11, and
wouldn't trade
6.
him for anybody. The
No,
the the real
but he's
question
not the same guy.
is the real question is once you decide that he's not the same guy right now and that you're not sure if you're
Mhm.
gonna get that back anytime soon. Maybe if depending on you, I don't know, you might not get the rest of the year. You might, I don't know. They'll have to figure that out for themselves. The question is, do
Yeah.
you keep playing offense in the same way when you know he's not the same player? Do we continue to let this like long played out half court sets where the whole object is to get him the ball? Before, even when he wasn't scoring some games, the passes were really good. And so you kind of he calls double teams. So then he would get good passes out of
Well,
there to get other people's shots. Tonight and different times, it's starting to feel
it,
like
was there a double team tonight?
I don't think so.
Zero.
Yeah.
Todd Golden in Florida, they had their big guy. That's why I started the pod with that. They trusted their big guys to guard him and make life difficult for him, whether that's with his injury or whatever. And it worked. The reason we're not getting those shots is because Florida had the dudes to stand up to him. And whether he missed some shots he should have made or whatever, and we're still the nation's number one offense, by the way. Florida's number 3. I just looked it up, even after today. So I think we should calm the trouble. And I think the nice thing about Broom, we've talked about a ton to get him the ball there, but sometimes it's like 10 seconds left. Oh, yeah, give it to Janai. Let him do something and see if they double. And I still think that's fine. I didn't get the sense we were until things were really bad and we were down like 19 or 17. I didn't get the sense we were like forcing it really hard to him every possession. I didn't feel like that. But it's something to watch. I think, but my big takeaway from what you said and what I watched was how many teams who have, I don't know how many teams in the SEC have guys like Florida has, but if you do have a big guy who you think can defend him, this slightly less explosive Janai Broom, I think you got to do that and not leave Miles Kelly and Chad Baker Mazara to Hot Pettiford, right? You got to let him get a tough two.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the issue is usually these twos go in, so it doesn't matter. Now these tough twos that you're asking to make aren't going in. It's a huge deal. I guess like aspect of it, and I'm not the best X's and O's guys. I just kind of vibe with what I see out there is that we didn't need to this year because he's playing so great. We don't need the object is to just get him the ball one on one, and you're good. That's the play. Get him the ball one on one, and you're Gucci. You're all good to go. In the past, when we've had centers, if we're going to work the ball to him, it's a kind of a set play. We're going to get him in motion. Like the object's not necessarily to give him the ball; it's to get it to an open guy in this rotation somewhere. And now the object most of the year's been just get it to him one on one. If that's I just don't know if that's our best play anymore. If he's going to keep missing these twos, it's just something to watch. If we lose another game and he's inefficient again, it might be another situation where it's like, all right, he's part of the team, not the guy I get the ball to anymore. So something to watch. Again, hopefully I'm wrong, but sometimes I call these out a game early. We'll see.
I was gonna say sometimes you're really really correct. I mean, I was just looking at it. Florida, by the way, is number three in the country in offense after this game, and I think going in they were similar. Alabama's number four, Kentucky's number two, Auburn's number one, Purdue is number seven on offense. Bunch of teams that were just. This is the first time a team really got off on our defense, like in a pretty significant way, and that's obviously going to be something we have to figure out before we play in Tuscaloosa next week.
Are they updated already, these stats? Where's our defense
They
at
do.
now?
Ken Palm updates rapidly.
So we're still top 15, it
Here,
looks like, on
Jackson.
defense.
Yeah, we're 15th in defense,
Still impressive.
which is fine. And Florida was 11th. Florida's 11th. So this was a really really good matchup. My question for you is, as we wrap up, like, did you leave this game being like, oh my gosh, the defense was really bad, or was it more like our offense let us down? Like, was there one side because both sides were disappointing in certain ways, but
Yeah.
was there a lot of games you come away and you're like, man, our offense just everybody in basketball when you lose a game, everybody has their opinion, right? It's like, well, we missed free throws and we let Clayton hit through, we left guys open, we missed assignments. But for you, was it? To me, it was the defense. Giving up 90 at home to Florida, 48 in the
Yeah.
first half to Florida is kind of where we lost the game. But I was curious your thoughts.
I thought it wasn't necessarily strictly offense or defense. I think that's what I was talking like the two stats that got me were the opposing 3-point percentage and the fact that we shot poorly on our own rim with a lot of these like
Yeah.
inefficient twos that didn't go in. So it's just a doubling up that you can't have both happen at the same time. Uh, Defense wise, they shot a decent amount of threes in our face, and those you live with, and you hope that and you have games like this where they just hit them, and you just got unlucky. And then the issue was we did leave a decent amount of open threes open. I just felt like down low we got beat around a bit too. Like just felt
Mhm.
overall looking around that we got bullied a bit at all points in the game on defense, which was disappointing. Part of that could be Broom still not being 100%. Cardwell even got back down at
That's what
times. It
I
didn't
thought.
feel like
I,
this
I,
dominant monster like he usually is.
yeah,
CBM got just like laid out at one point. Some of this could be how the referees called the game that could have changed, but honestly, we almost never want them to call more fouls. There's always been silly fouls with this team, and that's something even Bruce Pearl talked about at the beginning of the year. So that was frustrating to watch sometimes. Like, just let them try to make a tough two. If you're already
yep.
beat down there, go straight up and down. And I guarantee they miss that half the time, but almost always we foul, and they just give them two free throws, and we have a foul on us. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel like our defense got exposed or anything, but I feel like every team from now on will try to be as physical as possible with us in every aspect of the game,
Mhm.
both on offense and
Mhm.
defense. They will come after Denver like jackals, like some of our freshman point guards we've had in the past that look embarrassing, which is just crazy. That I know like Denver was not supposed to be the point guard this year, so some of this is him playing out of position. But it's a lot of games in now, and they are going to be like jackals on him. They are going to try to trap him. They are going to stay on top of him every single time. Everyone's going to be brutal. It's going to be a battle every time it rebounds. Not that it already isn't in the SEC, but I think they're going to think there's an advantage there with some of our guys. So it'll be something to
Yeah.
watch. I think it was a bad game, but a lot of that, and ultimately what did we lose today? That's something I want to wrap up with a bit. Is like, in my opinion, we lost the National Player of the Year uh, prize. I don't think Janai is going to bounce back from this unless Cooper Flag, falters down the stretch and Janai turns it up again to where he was pre-injury. I just don't think that's there, and I think this will be a big game they point to. I think we lost this dominant position in the SEC, which is fine. We kind of knew that was not going to stay forever with how good they are. And we lost this like historic statistician kind of thing that was going on where people were saying we were favored against some of the best teams out there. But other than that, two of those don't really matter. I don't really care that much if we win National Player of the Year. Fine. I don't care that much if we're like this historic team. The only one that really matters is just that we lost the game in the SEC at home, and that hurts when there's such a competitive SEC. So I think it's fine. Thank God we fought at some point in the second half. If we hadn't done that, if we had just let go of the rope and mentally had issues like I thought we were going to have at one point, I'd be thinking the sky is falling, even with just one loss. I think we're back to neutral a bit from that. Not quite as good as I would like because I will be watching next time we go down Broome and CBM, which hurts because they're supposed to be our older leaders. But that's kind of my wrap up thoughts there.
Well, I would tell you that you're right. Probably about Player of the Year. That was probably already happening. Um, I just never really believed they were going to let Janai Bird win that, regardless. And the historic team thing, that's still going to be there because all of our numbers are still pretty great. So the people who buy into that kind of thing, which are mostly analytics driven, Ben made a great point in our group chat. Um, you analytics are helpful and stats are helpful to help us digest this. But anybody can lose. I mean, we've seen how often do we have to see in college basketball? It's one game. I mean, it. Now look, we're going to learn a lot about this team this week. Coming off that kind of loss, going to Vandy, which is just always a hard place for us to win. Going to Tuscaloosa when they're as hyped as they've ever been. They're a really good team. Man, we this team's gonna find out here in the next. I mean, really, the rest of the way, right? We have 8 games left, Jackson. That's all. There's 8 games left. It's a sprint to the finish, and we're in first place. But you're right; it's a little more tentative than it was. But by the way, Alabama's a 4.5 point favorite at Arkansas and Coach Cal tonight. Maybe
They
maybe we
just
can get
disappoint
a
me
game
all year
back.
long. All year long, Alabama just keeps winning. Every time, I'm like, well,
They do.
Arkansas, they beat Kentucky away. Maybe Calipari's starting to turn around a bit. Maybe he's figured something out. I get the vibe. If I'm a vibe based witchcraft, whatever here, is that Alabama's just going to dominate him tonight. And that was only like a blip that Calipari made sure he was ready for that Kentucky game. And now Alabama's going to win. And it's just going to be frustrating. Shout out
You're
to
probably right. But
Shout out to Pocket Watch, Chris Thomas, Mr. Beautiful, Connor Feemster, Cam's Current. We love the guys in the chat. Always appreciate you guys coming in. Sorry we didn't grab as many comments as we usually do from that, but it's been a tough loss. We had a lot to get off our chest there. Like Matt said, at Vanderbilt next, Nashville Auburn Club, you have had a great run of having lots of fans out and having cool events. Shout out to you guys. Matt's based in Nashville. I'm in Nashville a lot, so we just love seeing the Auburn people go nuts there. Fun city. Get out there,
it's gonna be another.
support. We're going to need some help because we cannot go into the Alabama game with a 2-loss streak. We cannot do that. That would be absolutely brutal. So we really need a good bounce back against Vandy to make me feel like the sky's not falling going in Alabama.
We can Jackson, but we better win that game in Tuscaloosa. That would be the caveat. If we pod on Tuesday after a Vandy loss, it's going to be like we gotta win in Tuscaloosa because that would even us up, give us the tiebreaker. It would flip things back, but it puts a ton of pressure on that Alabama game in Tuscaloosa if we lose on Tuesday.
I
You're
think
right.
we were all hoping we could get to the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa and be like, we can take this loss and it's fine. And now we're kind
Yes,
of like in
yes.
that neutral, like we could still take it and then beat them at home and we'll be okay. But lose to Vanderbilt, all of a sudden it's a must win. And you don't want to have to go must win against a top 5 Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
It's Alabama play this week. Let me look that up real quick. They go to Texas on Tuesday night. So we're at Vanderbilt. Alabama's at Texas the same night. And Vanderbilt just beat Texas in a close one at home today. So we'll see.
They've had some other tough games already. Alabama, that's why it's frustrating. They haven't lost yet. They played at Texas A&M, they played at Kentucky, they played at Mississippi State, and they won all of them, which was
Yeah,
frustrating. We
yeah.
kind of hoped they would have taken another loss by now so that we could, you know, have a little more of a lead. Who did they lose against? They lost at home against Ole Miss. Interesting.
Ole Miss.
At
Yep.
home, that was a crazy one. But they still have a lot of tough ones down the stretch too. They've got to play us at home. They've got to play at Missouri, who's been a really good team actually this year. Home against Kentucky, home Mississippi State, at Tennessee. Love that. Love that for Alabama. Florida at home, and then yeah, they have a much. I don't know. We both have touch stretches going down the stretch. At least it's nice that we're talking this way. I mean, before the season, talking about how like we've got a 1 game lead on the next SEC team, and talking about how tough it is pretty decent. So
Yeah,
we've
we
gone
we did
on.
our job in the first half to go
We've
9-0, and now it's going to get real. It would have been really nice, like you said. The big takeaway is Alabama winning those 3 road games has really kept them in good position. It would have been everybody else has 3 losses again in league play. So if they had just dropped 1 or 2 more today would have been frustrating. But but now it's really setting up for Auburn and Alabama to be 50-50 battling it out, which we were hoping, I think, to be in a little better position. But we'll see. A lot can change.
I don't know if Matt mentioned this or I mentioned this. I definitely didn't mention it. And just to get this box checked off for any of these listeners at home, Elijah Martin, the second leading scorer for Florida, did not play this game. So it makes it doubly hurt that we lost like this because they were out one of their best players. Imagine if we were out CBM or Tahad or Miles Keller, anybody really. Like, and then we beat somebody like this, like beat Florida like this would be a big deal. So yeah, he was out. That's all. I just want to check that box off. I know we've been going on, and this is a lost
But they got
podcast.
Walter Clayton back. They
Yeah,
got Walter
well,
Clayton back tonight too.
their leading scorer, Walter Clinton, who's actually is going to be a on an all SEC first team probably, really good
Yeah.
player. But we went on and on. The Lost podcasts always have way less listeners, so I don't know why we take this long. But you learn more from these Lost podcasts the same way the teams learn more. And for our hardcore fans and listeners, we can console each other with these Lost podcasts, and I hope we talked about the talking point you're frustrated about and everything. So thanks for coming, guys. And Matt, are you still having fun even with this loss?
Yeah, still having fun. Now it's just game on for the rest of this season. Let's go.
If I look at the whole season, I'm still having a lot of fun. It wasn't the most fun game to watch, but I'm still having fun as an Auburn basketball fan. Glad everybody could go out to Pearlville and camp out and do all that. Storman said he just glad he's not one of these students that camp out to watch that loss. I guarantee some of those kids out there camping out, even with the loss, will be talking about that for years and years to their kids and different things that they camped out for these great Auburn teams. So that's just how it is in sports sometimes. And, War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Cool. Thanks, YouTube. Glad we could, console each other, like we call it victory, Tumor's Corner live stream when we're winning. But when we're losing, it's going to the local biscuit shop, the what's that barbecue place y'all used to go to?
Price's Barbecue House, RIP.
Yeah. What's the other one? There's another
Byron's.
one. Byron's. Yeah.
Byron's.
It's like going to Byron's and
Still
talking
going.
about it on Sunday morning or whatever you want to
Yeah.
talk about, So I hope we can be there. If you don't have a lot of other Auburn basketball freaks in your life the way I do, I hope we can be your pseudo relationship with that. So thanks for coming, guys.
We got some people, some pretty noteworthy Auburn people in the Twitter world who out of nowhere just kind of tweeted that that's how they process the basketball game. They listen to our podcast, which was pretty cool. People we didn't know listen necessarily,
I hope so,
which was nice to see because yeah.
For the few people that are on YouTube now, like we've talked about plenty times on the pod, that we were just frustrated that there wasn't more basketball content. So we started recording our phone calls essentially, and it's built a little bit. We've got more of an audience now, and it's been a good time. I think there's a lot of beat writer podcasts now, but it's a different listen in my opinion because they've got to like act like sports writers and be all polished and everything, and they just cover it from a
They have
different
a real
standpoint.
job with
Yeah,
sports, whereas we don't.
we can have a little more fun with it. We can meme a little more. We can get frustrated and get angry and be exuberant, So I think we bring something a little different. So tell your friends, send a copy over. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
We'll yeah, War Eagle, everybody. Thanks for the listen, and
Thanks,
don't hang
Dave.
your heads too much. It's lost to a good game, lost to a good team, and like I said, we will. This team, Bruce will have these guys ready to go this week.